In this video, I'm going to show you how you can process property transactions in Xero. So things like receiving rent, paying out mortgages, and paying contractors. So watch in for a demonstration. Okay, so in this demo, I'm going to show you how you can process property transactions into your Xero account. And so the first thing you need to do is you're going to have to have already set up, connected your bank account to Xero. I've got a separate video which takes you on how to do this in the playlist, and I'll put a link in the description. Once you've got your bank account connected to Xero, bank transactions are going to start to automatically be pulled from your bank account into Xero, and then it's then your job to process them. So what I've done is using the demo account here, I've pulled a number of property transactions into the savings account, but ordinarily this would probably come into your current account. So I'm doing it now. I'm just going to click onto that page to reconcile these transactions. What we can see here is we've got a series of transactions, and for a property investor, your transactions are going to look a little bit something like this. It'll be a series, hopefully, assuming you've got tenants in your properties and they're paying their rent on time. You'll have a series of monthly payments receipts in from tenants as they pay their rent to you. This could also be from a managing agent if you employ one to manage your properties. You're also, unless you're lucky enough to own your properties free and clear without a mortgage, you're going to receive a series of mortgage payments on a monthly basis. And usually your rent will come in and your mortgages will go out around about the same time towards the start of the month. So we've got here is I've put a series of mortgage payments and rent receipts, and also got at the bottom here a contractor payment. So I'm just going to show you a number of different ways how you can process these transactions. Okay, so the first one then is to do it manually. So this could be if, for example, you've got a one-off payment and you just want to quickly put it in, and you're probably not going to use that contractor again. You don't want to link the specific receipt to the transaction. You might have your own receipt filing system which doesn't require you to put it through Xero, in which case this is what you would do. The first thing is then you'd copy the name of the contractor, which is in the description in Xero, and put it into the who, then create a new contact. That basically means there's a new contact set up for that payee. So whenever you need to pay that person again, they're going to be automatically held in Xero to make it easier for next time. You're then going to need to choose the correct accounting code. So I've assumed at this point you've already set up your chart of accounts for a property investment company. I've also got a video on how you can do this, and I also can give you a chart of accounts that you can use, which will help you set things up quickly. So this is already set up and in place in this case. So this is a repair. So I'm going to put it in as a repair and renewals, and I've got the relevant accounting code there. And then I can put in a description, track it. And there's also an option to use tracking categories. I'm not going to use that in this case, but again, I've got another separate video on how to use tracking categories. So if you've got multiple properties, how you can basically link income and expenses to a particular property. It's a really handy tip for property investors. Once I've put all those details in there, all I can do is click OK, and it's going to mean that particular invoice is then that payment through Xero has been reconciled. So I'm going to click OK. That's done. Okay, there's another way we can do it as well is by setting up bank rules, and this is a really helpful tool in Xero for when you've got multiple kind of repeated transactions. So it's ideal for rent and also for mortgage payments. So I'll show you how to do that now. So rather than putting the details for this one transaction, what I'm going to do is I'm going to click Options, Create Bank Rule. And it really relies upon whatever the details of the transaction are. So if you've got a monthly payment from your tenant, the payee details, they're always going to be the same. However, sometimes you find they could change ever so slightly. So some of the details could change a little bit. So I would just get rid of equals and put contains. So whenever we get a payment from Mr. Smith, that's going to trigger this rule. You could also keep the description as rent as well, although it might be that in some cases you don't use that description, in which case it won't work. So let's remove that in this case. So I'm just basically, in this case, for any payments from Mr. Smith, I know that that's going to be rent. There's other information you can put in there, conditions to help you determine as well. So it could be things like amount, reference, analysis code. So if you knew it was a set amount every month, you could also add that in just to make it a bit more accurate. But in my case, I'm just going to use Mr. Smith payments in. That means it's rent. And then we're going to basically then set up a new contact. So this is the first time Mr. Smith has paid us. So let's put his details in there. I'm going to go click new contact. So that's set up as a contact now. And we've now got the option to allocate line items. So we're actually going to use the second one. So we're not going to allocate fixed value line items. We're going to do this second one with any remainder, allocate ratios using percent line items. So in here, we're going to include a description. So it's going to be Mr. Smith rent for such and such a property. And then we're going to put the accounting code. So for rental payments, again, we've set up our chart of accounts. I'm using rents receivable. Yours might look slightly different. It might be revenue, but I would use rent receivable for a property investment company. There's no VAT for property income. Region isn't applicable. And then we just need to, at the bottom, give it a rule name. So I'm going to call it Mr. Smith. I'm going to leave it as that. Then I'm going to click Save. What we'll see now is that any of the transactions that are named Mr. Smith, and there's four of them in there, that rule is now automatically going to apply. So that's going to make it really quick for me to go through and very quickly just give a quick check of these transactions and click OK. You see now we've got these mortgage payments as well, and we can actually do the same, set up a similar rule for them, except rather than receive income, this is for a spending income rule. So that's one way we do it. It's exactly the same process for setting up for the bank. However, there's another way you can do it as well, is if for some reason you didn't want to set up a bank rule, if you didn't find it accurate enough, another way you can do it is a bit like the first one I showed you, where it was a manual transaction. However, Xero, and hopefully in this case it's going to work, is going to actually learn, basically use machine learning to understand what a payment is likely going to be based off history of using Xero. So I'm going to put the contact details in. So this is a mortgage payment, so it's going to be other interest, and I've set that up in my chart of accounts. I'm going to add a description, so mortgage for X property, and then we click OK. What we can see there, you just saw it really quickly flip, is that these payments now, Xero has learned that we've used these payment details for a similar transaction, and basically it's going to automatically put them in. So this is another way to do it. If you don't want to set up a bank rule, or you're having issues with bank rules, you can also just set up, it basically almost does a bank rule automatically based off how you interact with Xero and the details you apply to certain transactions. So that's another way you can do it. I found personally bank rules are more accurate if you're going to be doing recurring payments. I think it's the best way to go. But what we can see now is we've gone from having a big list of transactions to process in a very small amount of time. We've got pretty much all of them automatically aligned. And so it's going to make it really quick to process these transactions in Xero. And basically, the state you want to be is that you've got all these transactions in Xero, and the very majority of them are going to have rules applied to them, or it's going to remember previously what the transaction was and apply the right contact details. That's going to make your reconciliation of bank transactions really quick and smooth. What I'm going to do now is I'm just going to show you a demonstration of the kind of final way that you can assign transactions in Xero, and this basically uses a linked piece of software called hubdoc. This is the best way of applying certain transactions, such as, for example, the contractor invoice, where there was a receipt that we can use to link the transaction to that specific receipt. So what I'll do is now I'll show you a demonstration on a similar transaction for some computer equipment which I purchased. Sorry to disturb the video, but hopefully you're finding it useful. If so, please can you like and subscribe for further content. We're going to go into hubdoc, This is the software which is linked to Xero. It comes free with a Xero subscription. It basically enables you to insert your receipts directly and link them into Xero. There are other options. There's paid for software you can use as well, but this is a free one included with your Xero subscription. And for most kind of property investment companies, it should be sufficient. So the first thing to do then, there's different ways to do this. We can either drag and drop a file into there, or we can use the hubdoc app to insert our receipt that way, or even email it to a bespoke email account we've got for our hubdoc account. So I'm going to drag and drop. Give it a few seconds just to kind of process. Then we're going to see a receipt has arrived inside. Okay, it's got the duplicate button on mine. It won't have it on yours. That's because I've already processed this earlier just to save time, but I'm just going to show you the steps I went through. So we can see an invoice from Currys. We've got a number of different items in there. Total amount then is £1,339. What we're going to do then is go through and make sure all the details of the receipt is correct. So I'm going to click on here, receipt. I've got the suppliers correct, Currys, the date's correct. The total amount is correct, as is the VAT amount. So now I'm going to click below and make sure the Xero destination information is correct. So it's a purchase, awaiting payment, and the contact is Currys. And now we need to click the accounting codes. What we can do actually is, because there's, in this case, there's different equipment that needs to go to different accounting codes, we can actually click multiple. And what we can do there is we can add the details of all the different items in the invoice. I've grouped some of my items together as consumables. However, you could also go through and do it in full for each item. Then I click Save and Close. Okay, and once I'm happy that the amounts add up, I'm going to click Publish. Okay, now I'm going to go into Xero, into my dashboard, and into the relevant bank account. In my case, I purchased on a credit card, so that's the relevant account. And what's going to happen is, because I've put the invoice through hubdoc and I've put it through correctly, it's going to link it to the relevant transaction. It's going to be highlighted green. I'm going to click OK. Hope you found the video useful. If so, remember to like and subscribe for more similar content.